He said I wasn't beautiful enough to stand beside him. He signed the divorce papers without looking back. 5 years later, my face was on every magazine cover in the country, and he was standing outside my office, begging me to remember the man he used to be. I still remember the exact moment my husband told me I wasn't pretty enough for him anymore. We were sitting in our small kitchen, the one I had painted yellow because he once said it reminded him of sunshine. I was washing dishes from dinner, my hands covered in soap, and he was scrolling through his phone like he always did after meals. The silence between us wasn't unusual. We had been married for 8 years, and somewhere along the way, we had stopped talking about anything that mattered. But that night, the silence felt different. It felt heavy, like the air before a storm. I turned to ask him if he wanted tea, and that's when he said it. "Emma, I think we need to talk." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a script. I dried my hands on the towel and sat down across from him. My heart was already sinking, even though I didn't know why yet. He wouldn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the table, his fingers tapping nervously against his phone case. "I've been thinking about us," he said. "About our marriage, and I don't think it's working anymore." I felt my chest tight. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though part of me already knew. He finally looked up, and the coldness in his eyes made me feel like a stranger. "You're not the woman I married anymore, Emma. You've let yourself go. You don't take care of yourself the way you used to. And honestly, I don't feel proud to have you by my side anymore." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what he had just said. Let myself go. I looked down at my hands, at my plain clothes, at the apron I was still wearing. I had spent the last 8 years taking care of our home, cooking his meals, supporting his career, and making sure everything in his life ran smoothly. I had given up my own dreams, my own ambitions, because he said he needed me to focus on us. And now he was telling me I wasn't enough. "I want a divorce," he continued, his voice still calm, like he was discussing the weather. "I've already talked to a lawyer, I just need you to sign the papers." I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw something across the room and make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. Because some part of me had always believed that I wasn't good enough for him. That I was lucky he had chosen me in the first place. He slid the papers across the table, and I signed them with shaking hands. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say he was sorry. He just took the papers, stood up, and walked out of the kitchen. That was the last time we ever had a real conversation. 3 weeks later, he moved out. He didn't take much with him, just his clothes and his laptop. He left everything else behind, including me. I spent the first few days after he left just sitting in that yellow kitchen, staring at the walls, wondering where everything had gone wrong. I replayed every moment of our marriage in my mind, searching for the exact point when I had stopped being enough. Was it when I stopped wearing makeup every day? Was it when I gained a little weight after we got married? Was it when I stopped going to the salon every month because we were trying to save money? I didn't know. And the worst part was, I started to believe him. I started to believe that I really had let myself go, that I really wasn't beautiful anymore, that I deserved to be left behind. But then something inside me shifted. It happened one morning about 2 weeks after he left. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My hair was messy, my eyes were red from crying, and I looked exhausted. And I thought to myself, is this really who I am? Is this really all I'm worth? And for the first time in years, I felt angry. Not at him. At myself, for believing him, for letting him define my worth, for giving up everything I was just to make him comfortable. I decided right then and there that I wasn't going to be that person anymore. I wasn't going to be the woman who disappeared into someone else's shadow. I was going to find myself again, even if I had no idea where to start. I pulled out an old box from the back of my closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. Inside were sketches, fabric samples, and notebooks filled with designs I had drawn when I was younger, before I met him, before I became someone's wife and forgot I was ever someone on my own. I used to dream of becoming a fashion designer. I used to spend hours sketching dresses and imagining the kind of clothes that would make people feel beautiful, confident, and powerful. But when I married him, he told me it wasn't practical. He told me I should focus on supporting his career instead, that my dreams could wait. So I put them away. I folded them up and tucked them into a box, just like I had folded up parts of myself. But now, sitting on the floor of my empty apartment, surrounded by those old sketches, I realized something. My dreams hadn't died. They had just been waiting. I spent the next few months rebuilding my life from scratch. I got a job at a small boutique downtown just to pay the bills. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. I started sketching again, staying up late into the night, filling page after page with designs. I enrolled in online courses to learn about pattern making, garment construction, and fashion marketing. I watched videos, read books, and absorbed everything I could. I stopped waiting for permission to be who I wanted to be. I stopped waiting for someone to tell me I was good enough. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to feel like myself again. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was making a mistake. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I thought about calling him and asking if we could try again. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew that going back to him would mean going back to the version of myself that I had buried, and I wasn't willing to do that anymore. 6 months after the divorce, I launched my first small collection. It was just 10 pieces, all handmade, all designed and sewn by me in my tiny apartment. I sold them online, through a simple website I had built myself. I didn't expect much. I just wanted to see if anyone would care about the things I had created. But people did care. The collection sold out in 2 days. I started getting messages from people telling me how much they loved the designs, how the clothes made them feel confident and beautiful. I started getting requests for custom pieces, for more collections, for collaborations. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once, but it was also the first time in years that I felt truly alive. I kept going. I kept designing, kept creating, kept pushing myself to be better. I moved out of my small apartment and into a studio space where I could work. I hired a small team to help me with production. I started attending fashion events, networking with other designers, and pitching my work to buyers and boutiques. It was hard work. There were long days and sleepless nights. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when I felt like I was in over my head. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered that yellow kitchen. I remembered the look in his eyes when he told me I wasn't enough, and I kept going, because I wasn't doing this for him anymore. I was doing this for me. 2 years after the divorce, my brand started to take off. I was featured in a local magazine as an up-and-coming designer to watch. A few months later, a major retailer reached out to me about carrying my collection in their stores. And then, one day, I got a call that changed everything. A prestigious fashion magazine wanted to feature me in their annual issue about rising designers. They wanted to do a full spread, an interview, and a cover shoot. I couldn't believe it. Me on the cover of a magazine, the girl who was told she wasn't pretty enough, the woman who had been left behind because she wasn't worth standing beside. I said yes. And when the magazine came out, my face was everywhere. On newsstands, on social media, on billboards. I was wearing one of my own designs, a sleek black dress that made me feel powerful and elegant. My hair was styled, my makeup was flawless, and I was smiling. Not because someone told me to, but because I was genuinely happy. I had built something from nothing. I had taken all the pain and the heartbreak and turned it into something beautiful. And for the first time in my life, I felt proud of who I was. I didn't think about him much anymore. I had moved on. I had built a life that was mine, and I didn't need his approval or his validation. But then, one afternoon, I got a call from my assistant. "Emma," she said, her voice hesitant, "there's someone here to see you. He says he's your ex-husband." I stood there in my office, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to process what my assistant had just said. My ex-husband was here, after 3 years of silence. 3 years of building a life without him. 3 years of healing from the pain he had caused. And now he was standing in my lobby asking to see me. My first instinct was to say no. to tell my assistant to send him away to pretend I wasn't there. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was a need for closure. Or maybe I just wanted him to see what I had become. The woman he had thrown away like I was nothing. "Tell him I'll be down in 5 minutes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. I looked at myself in the mirror on the wall of my office. I was wearing one of my own designs, a tailored cream blazer over a silk blouse, paired with wide-leg trousers. My hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and I was wearing the kind of subtle, elegant makeup that made me feel confident. I looked like a different person than the woman he had left behind, and I was. I took the elevator down to the lobby, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I was going to say to him. I didn't know what he wanted. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him make me feel small ever again. When the elevator doors opened, I saw him immediately. He was standing by the window, his back to me, staring out at the city. He looked different too. Older maybe, tired. He was wearing a suit, but it didn't fit him the way it used to. He looked smaller somehow, like he had shrunk into himself. I walked toward him, my heels clicking against the marble floor. He turned when he heard me, and the moment our eyes met, I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, regret, maybe even shame. "Emma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hi, Daniel," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. It was strange, seeing him again after all this time. He used to be the center of my world, the person I built my entire life around. And now, standing in front of him, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a quiet indifference. "You look amazing," he said finally, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Thank you," I said simply. I didn't offer him a compliment in return. I didn't ask him how he was doing. I just waited for him to tell me why he was here. He shifted uncomfortably, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I saw the magazine," he said. "The cover, I couldn't believe it was you. I mean, I knew you were talented, but I never imagined." He trailed off, shaking his head. "What do you want, Daniel?" I asked, cutting through the small talk. He looked down at his feet, and for a moment, he looked like a little boy who had been caught doing something wrong. "I wanted to see you," he said. "I wanted to talk to you, to apologize." I crossed my arms, raising an eyebrow. "Apologize?" "Yes," he said, looking up at me. "I was wrong, Emma. I was so wrong. I said terrible things to you. I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. And I've regretted it every single day since." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, waiting for him to continue. "I didn't realize what I had until it was gone," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "You were everything to me, and I was too stupid to see it. I thought I wanted something different, someone different, but I was wrong. I've been miserable without you." I felt a flicker of something in my chest, not sympathy, not forgiveness, just a distant echo of the pain I used to feel. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. He hesitated, and I saw the truth in his eyes before he even spoke. "Because I saw you on that magazine cover," he admitted. "Because I saw what you've become, and I realized what I lost. And I thought maybe we could try again, maybe we could start over." I almost laughed. It was so absurd, so predictable. He didn't want me back because he loved me. He wanted me back because I was successful now, because I was on magazine covers and running my own business. Because I was finally the kind of woman he thought was worthy of standing beside him. "No," I said firmly. His face fell. "Emma, please, just hear me out. I know I don't deserve another chance, but—" "You're right," I interrupted. "You don't deserve another chance, and I'm not interested in giving you one." He stared at me, his mouth slightly open, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You told me I wasn't beautiful enough," I continued, my voice calm but steady. "You told me I had let myself go. You made me believe that I wasn't worthy of love, that I wasn't enough. And you know what? I believed you. For a long time I believed you, but I don't anymore." His eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I saw the man I used to love, the man I used to think was my entire world. But that man was gone, or maybe he had never really existed in the first place. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't change what you did. And it doesn't mean I owe you anything." He reached out like he was going to touch my arm, but I stepped back. I'm not the same person I was when you left me, I said. I'm not the woman who needed your approval to feel beautiful. I'm not the woman who would put her dreams aside to make you comfortable. I've built a life for myself, Daniel. A life I'm proud of, and you're not a part of it. He looked at me with so much pain in his eyes, and I felt a strange sense of peace. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I finally understood that I didn't need his validation. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need anything from him at all. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, but it's not going to be with me. I turned and walked back toward the elevator, leaving him standing there in the lobby. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because I had already moved on, and nothing he could say or do was going to change that. When I got back to my office, I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My hands were shaking slightly and my heart was racing, but I felt good, strong, like I had finally closed a chapter of my life that I had been carrying around for too long. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the buildings. I thought about the woman I used to be, the woman who believed she wasn't enough. And I thought about the woman I had become, the woman who knew her worth. It had been a long journey. There had been moments when I wanted to give up, when I didn't think I was strong enough to keep going. But I had, and I was so proud of myself for that. I picked up my phone and called my best friend Mia. She had been there for me through everything. Through the divorce, through the sleepless nights, through the moments when I doubted myself. "Hey," she answered on the second ring. "How are you?" "He came to see me," I said. There was a pause. "Daniel." "Yeah," I said. "He saw the magazine cover and wanted to apologize, said he wanted to try again." "What did you say?" Mia asked, her voice tight with concern. I smiled. "I said no." I heard her let out a breath of relief. "Good, you deserve so much better than him, Emma. You always have." "I know," I said, and I meant it. We talked for a while longer, and by the time I hung up, I felt lighter. Like I had let go of a weight I didn't even realize I was still carrying. That night, I went home to my apartment, the one I had worked so hard to afford. It was small but beautiful, filled with things that made me happy. My sketches on the walls, fabrics draped over furniture, a sewing machine in the corner. It was a space that was entirely mine. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. I thought about the yellow kitchen, the one I used to clean every day. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who believed she wasn't enough, and I realized that I didn't miss her. I didn't miss that version of myself, because the woman I had become was so much stronger, so much braver, and so much more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. The weeks after Daniel showed up at my office were strange. I thought I would feel vindicated, powerful, like I had won some kind of battle. And in a way, I did feel those things. But I also felt something unexpected. I felt sad, not for him, not for us, but for the girl I used to be, the girl who thought love meant shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. I had worked so hard to build this new life, to become someone I was proud of. But seeing Daniel again reminded me of how much I had lost in the process. Not him, but years of my life, years I had spent believing I wasn't good enough, that I needed to change myself to be loved. I couldn't get those years back, and that hurt more than I expected. I threw myself into my work, the way I always did when I needed to escape my own thoughts. I had a new collection to design, and the pressure was on. My last collection had been a success, but I knew that in the fashion world, you were only as good as your next piece. I spent long hours in my studio, sketching and draping fabric on dress forms, trying to bring my vision to life. My team was amazing, but there were still moments when I felt overwhelmed. Moments when I wondered if I was really cut out for this, if I was just fooling myself into thinking I could make it in such a competitive industry. But then I would remember Daniel's face in that lobby, the way he looked at me like he couldn't believe what I had become, and I would push those doubts aside and keep working, because proving him wrong wasn't the point anymore. Proving to myself that I could do this was. One afternoon, my assistant, Jenna, knocked on my studio door. She was holding a large envelope, and she had a strange look on her face. "This just came for you," she said, handing it to me. I looked at the envelope. It was thick, cream-colored, and had my name written on it in elegant handwriting. There was no return address. I opened it carefully, and inside was an invitation. A wedding invitation. I felt my stomach drop as I read the names on the card. Daniel Matthews and Victoria Ashford. Request the honor of your presence at their wedding. The date was 2 months away. I stared at the invitation, my mind racing. Victoria Ashford. I knew that name. She was a socialite, the daughter of a wealthy businessman. I had seen her in magazines and at events. She was beautiful, polished, and everything I used to think I was. So this was why he had come to see me. Not because he genuinely wanted me back, but because he was getting married and felt guilty. Or maybe he wanted to see if I would fall apart when I found out. Or maybe he just wanted to show me that he had moved on, that he had found someone better. I didn't know. And I realized, as I stood there holding that invitation, that I didn't care. "Are you okay?" Jenna asked, her voice gentle. I looked up at her and smiled. "Yeah," I said, "I'm fine." And I was. Because the truth was, Daniel getting married didn't hurt me the way it might have a year ago. It didn't make me question my worth or wonder if I had made a mistake by turning him down. It just confirmed what I already knew. He hadn't changed. He was still the same man who measured people's value by how they looked, by how they made him appear to the world. And I didn't want any part of that. I tossed the invitation into the trash and went back to work, but over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because I was jealous, but because I kept wondering if Victoria knew what she was getting into. If she knew that Daniel was the kind of man who would throw you away the moment you stopped being useful to him. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. 2 weeks before Daniel's wedding, I received another unexpected message. This time, it was an email from a woman named Claire. She said she was a journalist working on a feature about successful women who had overcome personal challenges to build their careers. She had read about me in the magazine and wanted to interview me for her article. I hesitated at first. I had done a few interviews since my career took off, but I had always kept them focused on my work, on the designs and the business. I had never talked publicly about my divorce, about the pain I had gone through. But something about Claire's email felt different. She wasn't asking for a gossip piece or a sob story. She was asking about resilience, about transformation, about what it takes to rebuild your life when everything falls apart. So I said yes. We met at a small cafe near my studio, and Claire turned out to be warm and thoughtful, the kind of person who really listened when you spoke. She asked me about my designs, about my process, about what inspired me. And then, gently, she asked about my personal life. "I read that you went through a difficult divorce a few years ago," she said. "Do you think that experience influenced your work?" I took a sip of my coffee, considering how much I wanted to share. And then I decided to be honest. "It changed everything," I said. Before the divorce, I had forgotten who I was. I had spent so long trying to be the person my husband wanted me to be that I lost sight of my own dreams, my own identity. When he left, it felt like my world had ended. But looking back, it was actually the beginning of my life. Claire nodded, writing in her notebook. "That's a powerful perspective. A lot of people might have given up after something like that. I almost did," I admitted. There were days when I didn't want to get out of bed. Days when I thought I would never feel whole again. But I realized that I had a choice. I could let what he said define me, or I could prove him wrong. Not for him, for me. We talked for over an hour, and by the time the interview was over, I felt lighter, like I had finally been able to put into words something I had been carrying inside me for years. The article came out a week before Daniel's wedding. Claire had done a beautiful job, weaving together my story with insights about resilience and self-worth. She didn't sensationalize the divorce or turn it into a revenge story. She framed it as a journey of rediscovery, of a woman who found her strength in the darkest moment of her life. The response was overwhelming. I received hundreds of messages from women who said my story had inspired them. Women who were going through divorces, who had been told they weren't good enough, who were struggling to find their own identities. I cried reading some of those messages, because I realized that my pain hadn't been for nothing. that by sharing my story, I had helped other people feel less alone. And that meant more to me than any magazine cover or business success ever could. The day of Daniel's wedding arrived, and I didn't think about it much. I spent the day in my studio, working on a new design. I had learned that the best way to move forward was to stay focused on the things that brought me joy, on the work that made me feel alive. But that evening, as I was getting ready to leave, Jenna knocked on my door again. "There's someone here to see you," she said. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. "Who is it?" I asked. Jenna hesitated. She said her name is Victoria. My heart skipped a beat. Victoria, Daniel's fiancée. What was she doing here? I walked out to the lobby and there she was. She looked exactly like her pictures, beautiful and poised, wearing an elegant dress and designer heels. But up close I could see something else. She looked tired, scared. "Emma," she said, standing up when she saw me. "Yes," I said cautiously. "Can I help you?" She glanced around, then looked back at me. "Can we talk, somewhere private?" I hesitated, but something in her eyes made me say yes. I led her back to my office and closed the door. We sat down across from each other, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "I'm sorry to just show up like this," she said finally. "I know this must be strange, but I needed to talk to you." "About what?" I asked, though I already had a feeling I knew. She took a deep breath. "About Daniel, and about you." I sat there, looking at Victoria, trying to understand why she was in my office on the day she was supposed to be marrying my ex-husband. She was nervous, I could tell. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and she kept glancing at the door like she was afraid someone might walk in. "I know this is strange," she said again, her voice shaking slightly. "And I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I didn't know where else to go." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression neutral. "Why are you here, Victoria?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I read the article, the one you did with that journalist, and it made me realize something." I waited, letting her take her time. "Daniel never told me about you," she said quietly. "I mean, he told me he was divorced, but he made it sound like it was mutual, like you both just grew apart. He never told me that he said those things to you, that he left you because he didn't think you were beautiful enough." She looked up at me and I saw tears in her eyes. When I read that article, I felt sick because I realized that's exactly how he makes me feel. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" She wiped at her eyes, trying to compose herself. "At first, everything was perfect. He was charming and attentive, and he made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. But over the past few months, things have changed. He started making comments about my appearance. Little things at first, like asking if I was really going to eat that dessert or suggesting I try a new workout routine. But then it got worse." She paused, her voice breaking. "Last week, he told me I needed to lose weight before the wedding. He said he wanted me to look perfect in the photos, that it was important for his image. And when I got upset, he told me I was being too sensitive, that he was just trying to help me be the best version of myself." I felt a wave of anger wash over me. Not at her, at him, because I knew exactly what she was talking about. I had lived through it myself. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. She shook her head. "I should have seen it sooner. But I was so caught up in the idea of marrying him, of being part of his life, that I ignored all the warning signs. And then I read your story, and it was like looking into a mirror. I realized that if I marry him, I'm going to end up just like you did. Except maybe I won't be strong enough to leave." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her to run as far away from Daniel as she could, but I also knew that she had to make that decision for herself. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked gently. She looked at me with desperation in her eyes. "Because I need to know if I'm crazy, if I'm overreacting, or if what I'm feeling is real." I took a deep breath. "You're not crazy," I said. "And you're not overreacting. What you're feeling is real. Daniel is the kind of man who will make you feel like you're never enough, like you always have to change yourself to earn his love. And the worst part is, he'll make you believe it's your fault." She let out a sob, covering her face with her hands. "I don't know what to do. The wedding is supposed to be in 3 hours. Everyone is already at the venue. My family, his family, all our friends. How can I just walk away?" I moved my chair closer to hers and reached out, gently touching her arm. I can't tell you what to do, I said, but I can tell you what I wish someone had told me. Your worth is not determined by what he thinks of you. You are enough exactly as you are, and you deserve to be with someone who sees that, who celebrates that, not someone who tries to change you into someone else. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. But what if I never find anyone else? What if he's right and I'm not good enough? Then you'll be alone, I said. But you'll be free, and trust me, being alone is so much better than being with someone who makes you feel small. We sat there in silence for a moment, and I could see her mind working, weighing her options. What did you do? She asked finally. After he left you, how did you rebuild your life? I smiled, thinking back to those early days. I started by remembering who I was before I met him. I went back to my old dreams, the ones I had put aside, and I worked. I worked harder than I ever had in my life, not to prove anything to him, but to prove something to myself, that I was capable, that I was strong, that I deserved to be happy. She nodded slowly. And are you happy now? Yes, I said without hesitation. I am. It took time and it wasn't easy, but I built a life that's mine, and no one can take that away from me. Victoria stood up, wiping her eyes. Thank you, she said, for being honest with me, for not judging me. I could never judge you, I said. I've been exactly where you are. She gave me a small, sad smile. I need to go. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. I walked her to the door, and before she left, she turned back to me. Can I ask you one more thing? Of course, I said. Do you regret it? She asked. Marrying him in the first place. I thought about it for a moment. No, I said. Because if I hadn't married him, I wouldn't have gone through what I went through, and I wouldn't have become who I am today. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best versions of ourselves. She nodded, and then she was gone. I stood there in the empty lobby, wondering what she would decide, wondering if she would go through with the wedding or if she would find the courage to walk away. I hoped she would choose herself, but I knew that was a decision only she could make. That evening, I was at home when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from Mia. Have you seen this? She wrote, followed by a link. I clicked on it and my breath caught in my throat. It was a post from Victoria's social media account. A simple message posted just an hour ago. I have decided to call off my wedding. This was not an easy decision, but it was the right one. I deserve to be loved for who I am, not for who someone wants me to be. Thank you to everyone who has supported me. I'm looking forward to finding myself again. I felt tears prick at my eyes. She had done it. She had chosen herself. I didn't know what would happen next for Victoria. I didn't know if she would be okay or if she would struggle the way I had, but I knew she had taken the first step, and that was the hardest part. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mia. This is because of you, isn't it? I smiled. Maybe a little, I typed back. You're amazing, she replied. I didn't feel amazing. I just felt grateful. Grateful that I had gone through what I had because it meant I could help someone else. Grateful that my pain hadn't been for nothing. The next day I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, Emma, it's Claire, the journalist. Oh, hi, I said, surprised. I just wanted to let you know that the response to your article has been incredible, she said. I've gotten thousands of comments and messages. People are really connecting with your story. That's wonderful, I said. And there's something else, Claire continued. A publisher reached out to me. They want to know if you'd be interested in writing a book about your journey about rebuilding your life after loss. They think it could really help people. A book. I had never considered writing a book before, but the idea intrigued me. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course, Claire said. Take your time. But I think you have something important to say, Emma. And I think people need to hear it. After we hung up, I sat there, thinking about what she had said. I thought about all the messages I had received from women who had read my story. I thought about Victoria and the courage it had taken for her to walk away. And I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed she wasn't enough. Maybe I did have something to say. Maybe my story could help other people find their own strength. I picked up my phone and texted Claire back. Let's do it, I wrote, because I realized that my journey wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who had ever been made to feel small. Every woman who had ever been told she wasn't good enough. Every woman who needed to hear that she could rebuild her life, that she could find herself again. And if sharing my story could help even one person do that, then it was worth it. The months after Victoria called off her wedding were busy ones for me. I was working on my new collection, preparing for Fashion Week, and now I had agreed to write a book. It felt like everything was happening at once, and there were moments when I felt overwhelmed. But I also felt more alive than I had in years. The book was harder to write than I expected. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because it meant reliving some of the most painful moments of my life. I had to go back to that yellow kitchen, to the day Daniel told me I wasn't enough. I had to remember what it felt like to sign those divorce papers with shaking hands, to sit alone in my apartment wondering if I would ever feel whole again. But I also got to write about the good parts. About the moment I decided to stop believing his lies and start believing in myself. About the first collection I sold, the first time I saw my designs on someone else, the first time I realized I had built something real. My editor was wonderful. Her name was Patricia, and she had a way of asking questions that made me dig deeper, that made me think about my story in ways I hadn't before. "Why do you think you stayed with him for so long?" she asked during one of our sessions. I thought about it. "Because I loved him," I said. "But also because I didn't know I deserved better. I thought love was supposed to be hard, that if I just tried harder, if I just changed enough, he would love me the way I needed to be loved." "And now," Patricia asked, "now I know that love shouldn't make you feel like you have to shrink yourself," I said. "It should make you feel like you can expand, like you can be the fullest version of yourself. And if someone can't love you for who you really are, then they're not the right person for you." She smiled. "That's beautiful. Make sure you put that in the book." Writing the book also gave me a chance to reflect on how much I had changed. I wasn't the same woman who had signed those divorce papers 3 years ago. I was stronger, more confident, more sure of who I was and what I wanted. But I also realized that I was still learning, still growing. There were still moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was good enough. But now, instead of letting those doubts consume me, I acknowledged them and kept moving forward. Around this time, I started getting messages from Daniel. At first, they were sporadic. A text here and there, asking how I was doing, telling me he had seen something that reminded him of me. I didn't respond. I had said everything I needed to say to him that day in my office, and I didn't owe him anything else. But the messages kept coming, and they started to change in tone. "I miss you," he wrote one day. "I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go." I stared at the message, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. He finally understood what he had lost. But another part of me just felt sad. Sad that it had taken him this long to realize it. Sad that he only seemed to care now that I was successful. I still didn't respond. A few weeks later, he called me. I let it go to voicemail. But he kept calling, and eventually I listened to one of his messages. "Emma, please," his voice said, sounding strained and desperate. "I know I don't deserve to talk to you. I know I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to make up for. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, and I need to see you, please, just one more time." I deleted the message. But it stayed with me. I found myself thinking about it late at night, wondering what he wanted to say. Wondering if there was any part of me that still cared. Mia came over one evening, and I told her about the messages. "What do you think I should do?" I asked. She looked at me seriously. "Do you want to see him?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me is curious, part of me wants to know what he has to say, but another part of me thinks it's just going to drag me back into something I've worked so hard to move past." "Then don't do it," Mia said. "You don't owe him anything, Emma. You've already given him more than he deserved." She was right. I knew she was right, but still the question lingered. A week later, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text, but an actual letter delivered to my office. It was from Daniel. I held it in my hands for a long time before I opened it. The letter was long, several pages handwritten. He wrote about how sorry he was, about how he had been blind and selfish and cruel. He wrote about how he had spent the past 3 years regretting what he had done, how he had tried to move on but couldn't. He wrote about how seeing me on that magazine cover had broken something open inside him, how it had made him realize that I was the only person he had ever truly loved. And then, at the end, he asked if we could meet. Just to talk. He promised he wasn't trying to get back together with me, that he just needed closure. I put the letter down and stared out the window. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who would have jumped at the chance to hear him say he was sorry, who would have believed that maybe, just maybe, we could fix things. But I wasn't that woman anymore. And the truth was, I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his closure. I had already found my own. I picked up my phone and sent him a text. I got your letter. I appreciate you taking the time to apologize, but I don't think meeting is a good idea. I've moved on and I think you should too. I wish you well. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, and then I turned off my phone and went back to work. A few days later, I received a response. It was short. I understand. Thank you for everything, Emma. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was done, really done. I could finally close that chapter of my life and move forward without looking back. My book was published 6 months later. It was called Enough, A Journey of Rediscovery and Self-Worth. The cover featured a simple, elegant design with my name in bold letters. When I held the first copy in my hands, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was so proud. Proud of myself for having the courage to tell my story, for being vulnerable, for turning my pain into something that could help other people. The book launch was a small event at a local bookstore, but it felt significant. Mia was there, along with my team from work and a few journalists and bloggers who had been following my story. I gave a short reading from the first chapter, and then I opened the floor for questions. One woman raised her hand. "How did you find the strength to leave?" she asked. "How did you know you would be okay?" I thought about her question, trying to find the right words. "I didn't know I would be okay," I said honestly. I was terrified. But I realized that staying was scarier than leaving. Because staying meant giving up on myself, and I couldn't do that anymore. Another woman asked, "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" I smiled. "I don't know, maybe. But if I do, it will be to someone who loves me for who I am, not who they want me to be. Someone who makes me feel like I can be my fullest self. And if I never find that person, that's okay too. Because I've learned that I don't need someone else to complete me. I'm already whole." The room erupted in applause, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. These were the moments that made everything worth it. The book did well. Better than I expected. It climbed the bestseller lists, and I started getting invitations to speak at events, to do interviews, to share my story with even more people. I met women from all walks of life who had gone through similar experiences, who had been made to feel like they weren't enough. And hearing their stories, seeing their strength, reminded me that I wasn't alone, that we were all in this together. One evening, after a particularly long day of interviews and appearances, I came home to my apartment and just sat on my couch, looking around at the life I had built. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of doubt, still challenges to face, but it was mine. And I was so grateful for it. My phone buzzed with a message from Mia. "How are you holding up?" she wrote. "Good," I replied. "Tired but good." "You're doing amazing things, Em. I'm so proud of you," I smiled. "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." "You could have," she wrote back, "but I'm glad I got to be part of it." I put my phone down and closed my eyes, feeling a deep sense of peace. I had come so far from that yellow kitchen, from the woman who believed she wasn't beautiful enough, who thought her worth was determined by someone else's opinion. I had found myself again. And in the process, I had found something even more important. I had found my voice. The success of my book brought opportunities I never imagined. I was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and women's groups across the country. Each time I stood in front of an audience and shared my story, I saw my own past reflected in the faces looking back at me. Women who had been told they weren't enough. Women who had given up their dreams for someone else. Women who were just beginning to realize they deserved more. One of the most memorable speaking engagements was at a small community center in a town about 2 hours from where I lived. It wasn't glamorous, nothing like the big conferences in hotel ballrooms, but there was something intimate about it, something real. About 50 women filled the room, sitting in folding chairs, some with notebooks, some with their arms crossed like they weren't sure they wanted to be there. I started with my story, the way I always did. I told them about the yellow kitchen, about Daniel's words, about signing those divorce papers. I told them about the months of doubt and pain, and about the moment I decided to rebuild my life, and I told them about the journey that followed, the hard work and the small victories that eventually led to where I was now. When I finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly, one woman in the back raised her hand. "How do you stop believing the things they said about you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "How do you stop hearing their voice in your head, telling you you're not good enough?" I looked at her, and I saw myself. "It takes time," I said. "And I'm not going to lie to you, some days it's harder than others. But you have to start replacing their voice with your own. You have to remind yourself every single day that their words were never about you. They were about their own insecurity, their own need to control. And you have to surround yourself with people who see your worth, who remind you of it when you forget." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Another woman spoke up. "What if you have kids? What if leaving means disrupting their lives?" I took a breath. I didn't have children, so I couldn't speak from personal experience. But I had heard this question before from other women who felt trapped. "I think kids are more resilient than we give them credit for," I said. "I think they learn more from watching how we handle difficult situations than we realize. If you stay in a relationship where you're being diminished, where you're not valued, your children will learn that that's what love looks like. But if you leave, if you show them that you have the courage to choose yourself, you teach them that they deserve to be treated with respect too." The woman nodded slowly, and I could see her processing my words. After the talk, several women came up to me, wanting to share their own stories. I listened to each one, giving them my full attention. One woman told me she had been divorced for 5 years and was still struggling to feel confident. Another told me she was in the process of leaving her husband and was terrified of what came next. And one young woman, barely out of her 20s, told me she had just ended an engagement because her fiancé had started making her feel like she wasn't good enough. "Your story gave me the courage to walk away," she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you." I hugged her, feeling the weight of her words. This was why I did this. This was why I had shared my story, even when it was painful to revisit, because if it could help even one person find their strength, it was worth it. As my profile grew, so did the attention. Not all of it was positive. I started receiving messages from people who criticized me, who said I was bitter, that I was trying to vilify men, that I was encouraging women to give up on their marriages. Some of the comments were harsh, even cruel. "You're just angry because you couldn't keep your husband," one person wrote. "Maybe if you had tried harder, he wouldn't have left." I tried not to let the negative comments get to me. I knew that my story threatened some people, that it challenged their beliefs about relationships and gender roles. But it still hurt. Mia reminded me to focus on the positive, on the hundreds of women who had reached out to thank me, who had told me my story had changed their lives. "You can't please everyone," she said. "And you shouldn't try. The people who need to hear your message will hear it. The rest don't matter." She was right. But some nights, lying in bed, I would find myself scrolling through the negative comments, letting them get under my skin. I had to remind myself that I was doing this for the women who needed it, not for the people who didn't understand. Around this time, I was approached by a production company. They wanted to adapt my book into a documentary. The idea was to follow my journey, to interview other women who had gone through similar experiences, and to create something that could reach an even wider audience. I was hesitant at first. The book had been deeply personal, and the idea of putting my story on screen felt even more exposing. But the producer, a woman named Sarah, was passionate and thoughtful. "This isn't about exploiting your pain," she said. "It's about showing women that they're not alone, that there's a way forward, even when it feels impossible." I agreed, and we started filming. The process was intense. We shot scenes in my studio, in my apartment, at speaking engagements. We interviewed women I had met through my book, women who shared their own stories of leaving toxic relationships and rebuilding their lives. And we interviewed experts, therapists, and psychologists who could speak to the dynamics of emotional abuse and the process of healing. One of the most difficult parts of filming was going back to the house where Daniel and I had lived. The new owners had agreed to let us film there, and walking into that yellow kitchen again was surreal. It looked different, of course. They had repainted the walls, replaced the appliances, but the layout was the same. And standing there, I could still see myself washing dishes, could still hear Daniel's voice telling me I wasn't enough. The camera crew was respectful, giving me space as I walked through the rooms. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, just feeling the weight of the memories. And then I spoke directly to the camera. "This is where it happened," I said. "This is where I was told I wasn't beautiful enough." And for a long time I believed it. But standing here now, I realize that this kitchen doesn't have power over me anymore. It's just a room. And the woman who stood here all those years ago, she's gone. I'm not her anymore. It was cathartic, saying those words out loud. Like I was finally closing a door I had been holding open for too long. The documentary took several months to complete, and when I finally watched the finished product, I cried. It was raw and honest and beautiful. It told my story, but it also told the stories of so many other women. It showed the pain, but it also showed the strength, the resilience, the hope. The documentary premiered at a film festival and received an incredible response. It was picked up by a streaming platform and released worldwide. Almost overnight, my story reached millions of people. The response was overwhelming. My social media accounts exploded with messages. Women from all over the world shared their own stories, thanking me for giving them the courage to leave, to start over, to believe in themselves. But with the increased visibility came increased scrutiny. Reporters started digging into my past, looking for anything they could use to create drama. And then, one day, I received a call from a journalist who wanted to interview me about Daniel. "We've heard that your ex-husband is struggling financially," the journalist said, "and that he's been asking mutual acquaintances about you. Do you have any comment?" I felt a knot form in my stomach. "No," I said. "I don't have any comment. My ex-husband's life is not my concern." But the journalist persisted. "There are rumors that he's been saying you're the reason his life fell apart. That you turned everyone against him. What do you say to that?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've moved on with my life, and I suggest he do the same. I've never said anything publicly about him that wasn't true, and I've never tried to turn anyone against him. If he's struggling, I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not my responsibility." I hung up, feeling shaken. I hadn't thought about Daniel in months, and I didn't like being dragged back into his orbit. Mia came over that night, and we talked about it over wine. "Do you think he's really struggling?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know, and honestly I don't think it matters. You didn't cause his problems, Emma. He did that all on his own." "I know," I said. "But part of me still feels, I don't know, guilty maybe." Mia looked at me seriously. "You have nothing to feel guilty about. You told your story. You were honest about what happened. And if that made people see him differently, that's on him, not you." She was right. I knew she was right. But it was hard to shake the feeling that somehow by succeeding I had caused him pain, even though I knew that wasn't true, even though I knew that he had made his own choices just like I had made mine. A few weeks later, I received another letter from Daniel. This one was different from the last. It wasn't apologetic or pleading. It was angry. He accused me of ruining his reputation, of painting him as a villain in my book and documentary. He said I had only told one side of the story, that I had made myself out to be a victim when the truth was more complicated. He said I was selfish and vindictive, and that I should be ashamed of myself. I read the letter once, and then I put it away. I didn't respond, because I realized that nothing I said would change his mind. He would never understand that I hadn't told my story to hurt him. I had told it to help myself, and to help other women who needed to hear it. And if he couldn't see that, that was his problem, not mine. After Daniel's angry letter, I made a conscious decision not to let him back into my life, not even in my thoughts. I had spent too much time building something meaningful, and I wasn't going to let his bitterness pull me back into the past. I focused on what mattered to me: my work, my book, the documentary, and the incredible community of women who had formed around my story. But life has a way of bringing things full circle when you least expect it. A few months after the documentary was released, I was invited to speak at a major women's leadership summit in New York. It was one of the biggest events I had been asked to participate in, with thousands of attendees and some of the most influential women in business, politics, and entertainment. I was nervous but excited. The day of the summit, I arrived early to prepare. The venue was massive, a sprawling convention center with multiple stages and exhibition halls. I was scheduled to speak on the main stage in the afternoon, and I spent the morning attending other panels, listening to incredible women share their own journeys. During a break, I was walking through the exhibition hall when I saw someone I recognized: Victoria. She was standing at a booth, talking to a vendor, and she looked different than the last time I had seen her. She was dressed casually, in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked free, lighter, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. I hesitated, unsure if I should approach her. We hadn't spoken since the day she came to my office, and I didn't know if she would want to see me, but before I could decide, she turned and saw me. Her face lit up and she walked over with a smile. "Emma," she said, and there was genuine warmth in her voice. "I was hoping I'd run into you." "Victoria," I said, smiling back. "It's good to see you. What are you doing here?" "I'm actually working with a nonprofit now," she said. "We help women transition out of abusive relationships. I'm here representing the organization. What about you?" "I'm speaking this afternoon," I said, "about my book and the documentary." Her eyes widened. "I watched the documentary. It was incredible and so important. I cried through the whole thing." "Thank you," I said, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "That means a lot." We stood there for a moment, and then she said, "I never got a chance to properly thank you for that day in your office. You helped me see things clearly when I was too scared to see them myself. If it wasn't for you, I don't know if I would have had the courage to walk away." I shook my head. "You would have found it eventually. You're stronger than you think." "Maybe," she said, "but you made it easier, and I'm grateful for that." We talked for a while longer, and she told me about her life over the past year. After calling off the wedding, she had taken some time to focus on herself. She had gone to therapy, traveled, reconnected with old friends. And eventually, she had found her way to the nonprofit, where she was using her own experience to help other women. "It's the most meaningful work I've ever done," she said. "Helping women see that they deserve better, that they can rebuild their lives, it's changed me. In the best way." I felt so proud of her, proud of the woman she had become. We exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch. And as I walked away, I felt a deep sense of gratitude, because I realized that my story hadn't just helped me, it had helped her too. And that was more than I could have ever hoped for. That afternoon, I stood on the main stage in front of thousands of women, and I told my story one more time. But this time, it felt different. It felt less like I was opening old wounds and more like I was sharing a message of hope. I talked about the pain of being told I wasn't enough, about the long journey of rebuilding my life, and about the importance of knowing your worth. But I also talked about something new. I talked about forgiveness. "For a long time, I carried so much anger," I said. "Anger at my ex-husband for what he said to me, for how he made me feel. And that anger was valid. It was real. But over time, I realized that holding on to it was only hurting me. It was keeping me tied to the past, to a version of myself I didn't want to be anymore." I paused, looking out at the audience. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing what someone did to you. It just means releasing the hold they have over your heart. It means choosing to move forward without carrying that weight. And for me, that was the final step in truly moving on. The audience was silent, and I could see tears on many faces. After I finished, I received a standing ovation. Women came up to me afterward, hugging me, thanking me, sharing their own stories. It was overwhelming in the best way. That evening, after the summit, I went back to my hotel room and sat on the bed, reflecting on the day. My phone buzzed with a message from Mia. I watched the live stream of your talk. You were amazing. So proud of you. I smiled and typed back, "Thank you. I couldn't have done any of this without you." She sent back a heart emoji. I put my phone down and looked out the window at the city lights. I thought about how far I had come, about the woman I used to be and the woman I was now, and I realized that I had finally found what I had been searching for all along. Not validation from someone else, not success or fame or recognition, but peace. Peace with my past, peace with myself, and peace with the knowledge that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected email. It was from Daniel's sister, someone I hadn't heard from since the divorce. "Emma," the email began, "I hope this message finds you well. I know we haven't spoken in a long time and I'm not sure if you'll even read this, but I wanted to reach out because I think you should know something. Daniel is not doing well. He's been struggling for a while now, with work, with his personal life, and with his mental health. He's been seeing a therapist, and he's been trying to take responsibility for the things he did, for the way he treated you and others. I'm not writing to ask you to forgive him or to reach out to him. I know you've moved on and you have every right to, but I wanted you to know that he's genuinely sorry, and that he's trying to be a better person. I've always admired you, Emma. Even when you were married to my brother, I could see how kind and strong you were. And watching what you've accomplished since the divorce has been inspiring. I just wanted you to know that. I wish you all the best." I read the email several times, trying to figure out how I felt. Part of me felt sympathy for Daniel. I didn't want him to suffer. But another part of me felt detached, like his struggles were no longer my concern. I wrote back a short, polite response. "Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate you letting me know. I hope Daniel finds the help he needs, and I wish him well." And then I closed my laptop and went back to work, because I had learned that I couldn't carry other people's pain for them. I could have compassion, but I also had to protect my own peace. And that meant not letting Daniel back into my life, even through well-meaning messages from his family. I had spent too long being defined by my relationship with him, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. The following year was one of the most fulfilling of my life. My fashion brand continued to grow, and I opened my first flagship store in the city. It was a dream come true, seeing my designs displayed in a beautiful space, watching customers try on pieces and fall in love with them. I also continued speaking and writing. I started working on a second book. This one focused on practical advice for women who were rebuilding their lives after difficult relationships. I wanted to create something that was both inspiring and actionable, something that could truly help women take the next steps in their journey. And I stayed connected with the community of women I had met through my work. We shared our stories, supported each other, and celebrated each other's victories. It was a sisterhood I had never experienced before, and it filled my life with so much love and meaning. One day, I was at the flagship store helping a customer find the perfect dress when I saw someone walk in. It was a man, tall and well-dressed, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He looked around the store with genuine interest, and when our eyes met, he walked over. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Emma?" "Yes," I said, a little surprised. "I'm a huge fan of your work," he said. "My sister wore one of your dresses to her wedding, and it was stunning. I just wanted to tell you how much your designs meant to her." I smiled. "That's so kind of you to say, thank you." We chatted for a few minutes, and I learned that his name was Michael and he was an architect. He was thoughtful and genuine, and there was something about him that put me at ease. Before he left, he asked if I'd be interested in getting coffee sometime. "Just as friends," he added quickly. "I'd really love to hear more about your creative process. I'm always interested in how other artists work." I hesitated for a moment, but then I said yes, because I realized that I was ready to let someone new into my life, even if it was just as a friend. We met for coffee the following week, and it was easy and comfortable. We talked about our work, our passions, and our lives. He told me about his projects, and I told him about my journey in fashion. And when he asked about my book, I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't expected. He listened without judgment, with genuine empathy and interest. And when I finished, he said, "You're incredibly brave, Emma, not just for leaving, but for sharing your story and using it to help other people. That takes real strength." I felt a warmth in my chest, something I hadn't felt in a long time. We started meeting regularly after that, and slowly, carefully, a friendship began to form. I didn't rush it. I didn't try to force it into something it was. I just let it unfold naturally, enjoying the connection without putting pressure on it. And for the first time in years, I felt open to the possibility of something more. I never thought I'd be here, sitting in my flagship store on a quiet Sunday afternoon, looking out at the street and reflecting on everything that had brought me to this moment. It had been 5 years since Daniel told me I wasn't beautiful enough, 5 years since I signed those divorce papers with trembling hands, 5 years since I made the decision to rebuild my life from the ground up. And now, here I was, a successful designer with my own brand, a published author, the subject of a documentary that had reached millions, and most importantly, a woman who finally knew her worth. The journey had been long and painful, filled with moments of doubt and fear, but it had also been beautiful, because every step I took away from that yellow kitchen brought me closer to the person I was always meant to be. Michael and I had been seeing each other for about 6 months now, and what started as friendship had slowly, carefully grown into something more. He was different from anyone I had ever been with. He didn't try to change me or mold me into someone else. He celebrated who I was, encouraged my dreams, and made me feel seen in a way I had never experienced before. We took things slow. I was honest with him about my past, about my fears, about the walls I had built to protect myself. And he was patient. He never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give. He just showed up consistently and kindly, proving through his actions that he was someone I could trust. One evening, we were having dinner at a small restaurant, the kind of place with soft lighting and quiet conversation, and he reached across the table and took my hand. "I have something I want to tell you," he said, his eyes serious. My heart skipped a beat. "Okay. I know we've been taking things slow," he said. "And I respect that. I understand why. But I need you to know something. I'm falling in love with you, Emma, and I'm not saying that to pressure you or to rush you into anything. I just want you to know where I stand. Because you deserve to know that you're loved, completely, just as you are." I felt tears prick at my eyes. I had spent so long believing that I needed to change myself to be loved, that I needed to be prettier or thinner or quieter or different. And here was this man, looking at me with so much genuine affection, telling me that I was enough exactly as I was. "I'm falling in love with you too," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "And that terrifies me, because the last time I let someone in, it nearly destroyed me." He squeezed my hand. "I can't promise that I'll never hurt you," he said, "because we're human and we make mistakes, but I can promise that I will always respect you, I will always value you, and I will never make you feel like you need to be anyone other than who you are." I believed him. And slowly, I let my walls come down. We moved through life together, supporting each other's dreams and celebrating each other's victories. He came to my fashion shows, and I attended his architecture exhibitions. We traveled together, explored new cities, and built a life that felt balanced and full. But I also made sure to maintain my independence. I had learned the hard way what happened when you lost yourself in someone else, so I kept my own space, my own routines, my own identity, and Michael never asked me to give those things up. He understood that I needed them, and he respected that. Around this time, I received an invitation that took me by surprise. It was from a local university, asking if I would be interested in teaching a course on fashion design and entrepreneurship. I had never considered teaching before, but the idea intrigued me. I loved working with young designers, loved sharing what I had learned. So I said yes. Teaching turned out to be one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. My students were talented and passionate, full of dreams and ideas. I saw so much of my younger self in them, the girl who used to sketch dresses late into the night, imagining a future that seemed impossible. I tried to be the kind of mentor I wished I had when I was starting out. I was honest about the challenges, about the rejections and the failures and the moments of doubt. But I also encouraged them to keep going, to trust their vision, to believe in themselves even when no one else did. One of my students, a young woman named Lily, reminded me especially of myself. She was quiet and unsure, always questioning whether her work was good enough. I saw the same insecurity in her that I used to carry, and I made it a point to encourage her. "You have a unique voice," I told her one day after class. "Don't let anyone make you think you need to change it to fit in." She looked at me with wide eyes. "But what if no one likes my work?" "Then you keep creating anyway," I said, "because the right people will see it. And more importantly, you'll know that you stayed true to yourself." By the end of the semester, Lily had transformed. Her final collection was bold and original, and I could see the confidence radiating from her. After the showcase, she came up to me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "You helped me believe in myself." I hugged her, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment, because I realized that this was what it was all about. Not the magazine covers or the awards or the recognition, but helping other people find their strength, just like others had helped me find mine. One afternoon, I was at my studio when I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Emma, it's Daniel." My heart sank. I hadn't heard his voice in years, and hearing it now felt jarring. "What do you want, Daniel?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I know I have no right to call you," he said, "and I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I've been in therapy for the past 2 years, and my therapist suggested I reach out to the people I've hurt to make amends. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to take responsibility. So that's why I'm calling." I didn't say anything, I just waited. "I want you to know that I'm sorry," he said. "For everything. For the things I said to you, for the way I treated you, for making you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough, Emma, more than enough, and I was too broken to see it." He paused, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about why I did what I did, and I realize now that it was never about you. It was about me. About my own insecurities, my own need to feel important, my own fear of not being good enough. And I projected all of that onto you. I made you carry my pain, and that was wrong." I took a deep breath, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "I appreciate you taking responsibility." "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm trying to be a better person, for myself and for the people in my life." "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. "I really do." "Thank you," he said. "And Emma, I saw your documentary, and I read your book, and I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. You deserve all of it." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Thank you." We said goodbye, and I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time, processing the conversation. I realized that I did forgive him, not because he asked for it, but because I was ready to let go. I didn't need to carry the weight of his mistakes anymore. I had built a life I was proud of, and I wasn't going to let the past hold me back. That evening, I met Michael for dinner, and I told him about the call. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me feels relieved, like I finally got the closure I didn't know I needed. But another part of me just feels sad. Sad for the time I lost. Sad for the person I used to be." He reached across the table and took my hand. "You're not that person anymore," he said. "And maybe you needed to go through what you did to become who you are now. It doesn't make it fair, but it does make it part of your story." I smiled through my tears. "You're right." A few months later, I was asked to give a keynote speech at a major fashion and business conference. It was the biggest stage I had ever been on, with thousands of people in the audience and the event being live-streamed to millions more. I spent weeks preparing, wanting to make sure I said something meaningful. On the day of the speech, I stood backstage, my heart pounding. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed she wasn't beautiful enough. And I thought about the woman I had become, the one who had built something from nothing. I walked out onto the stage, and the applause was deafening. I took a deep breath and began. "5 years ago, I was told I wasn't beautiful enough," I said. "I was told that I had let myself go, that I wasn't worthy of standing beside the man I loved. And for a while, I believed it. I believed that my worth was determined by how I looked, by whether I fit into someone else's idea of beauty. But then something changed. I realized that beauty isn't something someone else gets to define for you. It's something you find within yourself. It's in your strength, your resilience, your courage to keep going even when everything feels impossible. I paused, looking out at the audience. My journey hasn't been easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, days when I didn't think I was strong enough or talented enough or brave enough, but I kept going. And I'm standing here today to tell you that you are enough, exactly as you are. You don't need to change yourself to be worthy of love or success or happiness. You just need to believe in yourself and keep going, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The audience erupted in applause, and I felt tears streaming down my face because I realized that I wasn't just speaking to them. I was speaking to the woman I used to be, telling her that she was going to be okay, that she was going to survive, that she was going to thrive. After the speech, I walked off stage and into Michael's arms. He held me tightly, and I let myself cry, not because I was sad, but because I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Gratitude for the journey, gratitude for the people who had supported me, gratitude for the woman I had become. That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The pain and the heartbreak, the doubt and the fear, the small victories and the big ones. And I realized that I wouldn't change any of it, because every single experience, good and bad, had shaped me into the person I was today, a person I was proud to be. I picked up my phone and opened my notes app, writing down a thought that had been forming in my mind. Your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to see it. You are enough. You have always been enough. And you will always be enough. I smiled and put my phone down, because I finally believed it. And that made all the difference.